Welcome back to the deep dive. Today's going to be a little different from our usual fare.
Yeah, it's definitely a shift.
Usually, we take a stack of articles or maybe a book and we pull out the fun fact.
Right, the dinner party trivia.
Exactly. Like, did you know octopuses have 3 hearts? That kind of thing.
Which is always fun.
It is, but today we are looking at a stack of sources that are essentially a blueprint.
And not a blueprint for a house.
Right. It's a blueprint for the architecture of, the architecture of the self.
Which sounds incredibly ambitious.
It sounds impossible, honestly. We're talking about how we construct meaning.
And how we process reality.
Yeah, and ultimately how we can, and I know this sounds like a cheesy tech brochure, upgrade the operating system.
It's a fascinating territory, though.
Yeah.
I mean, the core thesis here is that most of us are running on default settings.
We are just users.
Exactly. We are users of our own minds.
We just click the icons on the screen.
We react to the notifications.
Yeah.
We get angry when the app crashes.
But the invitation in these texts is to become the architect.
To actually get admin access to the code itself.
Right. And before we get into the heavy lifting, because listener be warned, there is some heavy lifting today.
Definitely. We have neuroscience and history and some pretty dense philosophy.
Yeah, I want to start right where the source material starts. I want to try something a little interactive.
The visualization exercise.
Yes. And I know usually when a host says close your eyes, you probably reach for the skip button.
Or roll your eyes.
Right, but stick with me here. Unless you are driving, of course. Please keep your eyes open if you're driving.
Safety first.
Always. But if you can, I really want to set the scene.
It's crucial for the context of everything we're about to discuss. It isn't just data. It's a whole perspective shift.
Okay, so imagine you are standing on top of a massive, wide plateau.
High up.
Very high up. You can feel the air is thinner here. It's crisp.
The sun is beating down.
But it's not hot, right? It's that clear, high-altitude light.
And notice the silence.
Yeah, it's not an empty silence.
It's electric.
It feels like potential.
Now in this headspace, turn around and look behind you.
Stretching back from where you are standing is a winding path.
And that path is your life.
And because we are on this really high vantage point, you can see everything.
You see the bright spots.
The victories, the graduations, the moments you fell in love.
But you also see the valleys.
The shadowy regrets.
The places where the path got muddy.
Or completely washed out. You see the detours.
The times you were just completely lost in the woods.
Thinking you'd never get out.
Only to pop out somewhere unexpectedly valuable.
It's all there. The logic of your life.
Point A led to point B.
Which led to the breakdown at point C.
Which brought you exactly here to this plateau.
Now turn around again, face forward.
What do you see?
Nothing.
Just open sky.
Endless horizon. There is absolutely no path laid out in front of you.
And this is the core concept we need to wrestle with today.
This visualization represents the metamind.
It's the realization that while the past is a script that has already been written
and filed away.
Right, filed away. The future is not a script handed down to you by fate.
Okay, let's stop there.
Yeah.
Because that sounds beautiful on a coffee mug.
Very inspirational.
Yeah, no script freedom and all that. But in reality, that is terrifying.
Oh, absolutely. It's paralyzing.
If there is no script, how do I know if I'm doing it right?
We crave the script.
We really do. We want the manual that says step 1, go to college.
Step 2, get the job.
Step 3, get married. Step 4, retire.
And we try to live that way. We desperately look for the track so we can just slot our wheels in and go.
But the source material argues that the anxiety we feel, that constant background hum of, I'm falling behind.
Or am I doing this right?
Yeah, that comes precisely because we are trying to follow a script that doesn't actually exist.
We are memorizing lines for a play that was canceled years ago.
Man, that is such a good way to put it. We are rehearsing for nothing.
The proposition here is, what if meaning isn't a treasure you're supposed to find hidden under a rock?
What if meaning is a building you have to construct?
Brick by brick. Right here on this empty plateau.
That is the mission of this deep dive.
We're going to move from this plateau through the labyrinth of thought.
Down into the body.
And finally, we're going to try to touch what the sources call the force unwitnessed.
From the surface to the source.
Exactly.
Let's start with section 1, the metamind and the operating system. We threw that term out there, metamind.
It sounds like something from a sci-fi movie.
It really does. What are we actually talking about here?
The sources use a few analogies, but the one that I think lands best is the ocean.
The ocean. Go on.
Think about your daily experience, like right now. You have thoughts constantly popping up.
I need to buy eggs.
I hope I didn't sound stupid in that meeting.
My back hurts.
Is it going to rain?
It's just constant noise.
Right. And these are the surface waves. They're choppy, they're wind-driven, and they're constantly changing.
And if you identify with those waves, you are constantly being tossed around.
You are seasick your entire life.
Because if I am my angry thought, then when the anger goes away, who am I?
Precisely. The metamind is the ocean beneath.
The deep, still water?
The water that contains the waves but isn't disturbed by them.
It's the awareness that can say, oh, look, there is a wave of anger.
Without actually becoming the anger.
There's another analogy the source uses that I really liked, the theater.
Oh, the theater of the mind.
Yeah, I think this one really helped separate the user from the architect.
Imagine your mind is a stage.
The actors are your thoughts and emotions.
One actor is dressed as anxiety pacing back and forth.
Sweating.
Another is ambition. Another is hunger.
And usually we think we are the actor.
We were down there on the stage under the bright lights.
Reciting the lines, terrified of missing a cue.
But the metamind is the audience. Or better yet, the director sitting in the dark watching the rehearsal.
The director can say, wow, the anxiety actor's really chewing the scenery today.
But the director isn't anxious. The director's just watching.
That distance, that gap between the actor and the director, that's the game changer.
It's the difference between saying I am sad and saying I am experiencing a wave of sadness.
It sounds like a semantic trick, just playing with words.
It does, but it changes the entire architecture of your brain. It creates space.
And in that space, you get to choose.
That is admin access.
But where does this admin live? Because the sources use a multi-story building analogy that I found really helpful for visualizing this.
Right. Picture a building. The top floor is the penthouse.
It's flooded with sunlight.
That is your conscious mind. Your plans, your logic, the voice you recognize as me.
Okay, penthouse. Got it.
Below that is a dimly lit floor. No windows.
This is where the servers are humming.
This is your habits, your patterns, your
Yeah.
deep-seated
With
beliefs.
stuff running in the background.
It controls the temperature and the lighting, but you never really look at it.
The autopilot floor.
Yes. But the metamind.
Where is that?
The metamind is the foundation. It's the concrete slab that supports the whole structure.
And the source makes a crucial point here. You can't redesign the building from the penthouse.
You really can't. You can't just think your way into a new personality.
You have to go down to the foundation to really change how the floors are structured.
So if we are going to be the architect, we have to operate from that foundation.
And this brings us to the practical side of things.
Because up until now, this has been very philosophical.
Very theoretical. But the sources give us practical principles for the architect.
Right. Because how do you actually live as an architect day to day?
The first principle is radical honesty, and they tell the story of Sarah.
This one hit really close to home for me.
Sarah was a serial volunteer.
I was on every committee.
Mhm.
PTA, charity, gala, neighborhood watch.
On paper, she was a saint. Everyone told her, you're so generous.
But she was miserable.
Completely drained.
And radical honesty meant admitting something really ugly about herself.
Which
She wasn't doing it because she cared. She was doing it for the resume.
she was doing it for the applause.
That takes a lot of guts to admit. I'm not nice, I'm just needy.
It's brutal. But when she admitted it, when she stopped lying to herself, she quit the committees.
She started mentoring students one-on-one.
She did less, but it was authentic.
That's the architect redesigning the building based on the actual load-bearing walls, not just the decoration.
The second principle is intentional focus. This is the story of Mike.
Mike felt scattered, overwhelmed, like a lot of us do.
So he started setting a focus word every morning.
Which, I'll be honest, sounds a little bit like something you'd see on a Pinterest board.
Live, laugh, love.
Exactly, that sounds cheesy. But there is actual neuroscience here.
It's about the reticular activating system, right? The RAS.
Yes, your brain is constantly filtering out data
Like if you buy a red Honda, suddenly you see red Hondas everywhere.
because the RAS is primed for it.
So if Mike sets his word to gratitude, he is programming his RAS.
He starts seeing things to be grateful for that he literally would not have seen otherwise.
He is applying a filter to the camera lens of his mind.
Third principle, holding meaning lightly.
This is Alex's story. Alex spent his 20s chasing promotions.
He had a script. Success equals vice president.
He ground himself into dust.
But when he got close, he realized he hated management. He loved teaching.
And holding meaning lightly meant he was willing to burn the old script.
He had to be willing to change the goal when the data changed.
Most of us cling to the goal even when it makes us miserable.
We'd rather be right than happy.
That is so true. And finally, the fourth principle, radical responsibility.
Moving from blame to what can I learn?
The story of Jasmine. She failed a group project.
And we've all been there. It is so easy to blame the team.
They were lazy. They didn't answer email.
That's the user mindset. The app is broken.
What's the architect mindset then?
Jasmine asked, what was my role in this failure?
She realized she hadn't communicated her expectations clearly.
She took ownership of the failure.
And that sounds like self-flagellation, but it's actually empowering.
Because if the problem is you, Alp, then you can fix it.
If the problem is them, you're helpless.
This all ties into the idea of the mind as an operating system.
We are trying to get admin access.
But to do that, we need ground rules.
The sources call these the 4 pillars.
These are the structural supports. The source is very stern here.
Without these pillars, any self-help you do is just decoration.
You're building on sand.
Okay, let's lay the foundation. Pillar 1, radical self-honesty.
We touched on this with Sarah.
It's the antidote to self-deception.
You have to acknowledge the shadowy regrets just as much as the bright victories,
If you don't know where you're starting from, you can't build anything stable.
which leads perfectly to pillar 2, flexible goals.
And the analogy here is the GPS. I love this analogy.
We use it every day. A GPS needs 2 things to work,
A target, which is where you want to go.
and a truth, which is where you are right now.
If I lied to the GPS and say I'm in New York when I'm actually in Chicago,
The directions are useless. You can have the best goal in the world, but if you aren't honest about your starting point, you'll never get there.
but the other part of the GPS analogy is crucial, recalculating.
Right. If you miss a turn, the GPS doesn't scream at you.
It doesn't say, you idiot, you ruined the trip, pull over and cry.
It just calculates a new route. That is a flexible goal.
The destination remains, but the path is fluid.
Most of us treat our life goals like a train track. If we derail, we're dead.
We really need to treat them like a GPS.
Pillar 3 is where the language gets a little technical.
Dimensional awareness, or homonymy.
Yeah, that's a $10 word.
I remember homonym from grade school. Bat the animal and bat the baseball stick.
Same sound, different meaning.
Right, but here the source applies it to feelings, and this is big.
Break it down for us.
So your body has a limited vocabulary.
It could do fast heart rate.
It can do sweaty palms. It can do a tight stomach.
That's the raw data. That's the sound of the word.
Okay, so my body is screaming high energy.
Exactly. But your mind, the interpreter, has to assign a meaning to that sound.
If you feel high energy while you are holding a winning lottery ticket, your mind labels it excitement.
But if you feel that exact same high energy while I'm walking down a dark alley at 2 a.m.,
Your mind labels it terror.
the physical sensation, the homonym, is identical.
The meaning is opposite.
So dimensional awareness is the ability to pause
Yeah.
and ask, what is this sensation actually?
It's realizing that anxiety and excitement are often the exact same energy.
It's framed by a different story.
If you can change the frame, you change the experience.
That leads to pillar 4, noun ships.
Or fluid identity.
This attacks the way we talk about ourselves, the party scenario.
Someone walks up to you, hands you a drink, and asks, so what do you do?
And you say, I am a podcast host,
Mm-hmm.
or I am an accountant.
We answer with nouns. We trap ourselves in boxes.
I am a teacher. The source argues this is a psychological cage.
Because if I am a teacher and I lose my job,
Then you cease to exist. You are nothing.
the shift is to move from nouns to verbs.
I am teaching right now. I am accounting right now.
It sounds like a grammar lesson, but it feels very different.
It creates psychological space.
The source mentions an engineer who is also a soccer coach on weekends.
If he is rigidly an engineer, coaching feels like a conflict.
Why is an engineer running around a field in shorts?
But if he is a person who does engineering and does coaching, he is fluid.
He can inhabit different modes without having an identity crisis,
And the source says these pillars are holographically complete.
which basically means they interlock.
You can't have flexible goals without radical truth.
You can't have truth without dimensional awareness.
They support each other like the legs of a table.
So we've built the foundation, we've got our pillars.
Now we walk to the edge of the map.
Section 3, the threshold of the known.
This is where the journey really begins. We are leaving the comfortable world of logic and education.
We are stepping into the unknown.
The sources describe a feeling called sacred confusion.
I love that phrase, sacred confusion.
I hate the feeling, though.
It's that moment when your old map stops working.
You thought you knew how the world worked, and suddenly nothing makes sense.
It feels like a breakdown.
But the source insists this is the breakdown that precedes the breakthrough.
If you aren't confused, you aren't learning.
You're just reciting old data.
And at this threshold, there are 3 revelations waiting for us.
Revelation number 1. The mind is not the ultimate authority.
This is a massive blow to the ego. We think our mind is the CEO.
But the source argues the mind is a processor, not an originator.
It translates data, but it doesn't create the data.
Revelation number 2.
Yeah.
The body is not subordinate.
It isn't a meat suit.
It isn't a taxi for your brain.
It is a sophisticated receiver transmitter.
It knows things the mind hasn't figured out yet.
And revelation number 3, there is something deeper than both.
The force. The animating principle.
The thing that is beating your heart right now without you asking it to.
To pass this threshold, we have to surrender the need for certainty.
Which is way easier said than done.
It requires deep humility. You have to admit that your logic can't explain everything.
You have to stop thinking mind over body and start thinking of them as partners.
Let's walk through that threshold into section 4, the labyrinth of thought.
If the mind isn't the CEO, what is it?
The source makes a really important distinction between the brain and the mind.
The brain is the hardware, right? The roads, the wires, the synapses.
The mind is the traffic.
Yeah.
It's the life moving through the city.
And the mind is an interpreter.
Always. The mind constructs reality.
It doesn't record it like a video camera.
2 people see a car accident. One sees danger and chaos.
The other sees gratitude that they survive.
The event is the exact same. The filter is different.
There's this concept of the garden of the mind, which I think is incredibly practical.
Yes. Every mental event is a seed.
Now here is the catch. You cannot stop weed seeds from blowing in.
Random thoughts, intrusive thoughts, weird fears.
They happen to everyone. You can't stop the wind.
So I'm not crazy for having crazy thoughts.
No, not at all. But you are the gardener.
You choose which seeds to water with your attention.
And this ties straight back to neuroplasticity.
Exactly. What you rehearse mentally, you reinforce neurologically.
If you water the seeds of anxiety every day,
If you dwell on them, replay them.
you are building a neural highway for anxiety.
You are growing a jungle of fear.
Not because you are broken, but because you are a really good gardener who watered the wrong seeds.
But we get stuck in these loops. The trap
The
loop.
circular nature of thought.
Thoughts lead to actions.
Actions lead to experiences.
Experiences reinforce the thoughts.
It's a completely self-fulfilling prophecy.
So how do we break it?
You don't have to blow up the whole system.
You just have to interrupt one single link.
One conscious choice, one moment of saying, I'm not going to water that seed today.
That breaks the loop.
Now, the source material takes a very dark, very serious turn here.
It does. It
Mhm.
uses a historical case study to illustrate what happens when the mind gets completely detached from reality.
It talks about Hitler in World War II.
And we need to be really careful here. This isn't a political history lesson.
Right. The authors are using this purely as an extreme example of cognitive distortion.
It's analyzing strategic failure caused by a warped mind.
Specifically, 3 distortions that led to his collapse. The first is infallibility.
The belief that he was chosen by fate.
This sounds empowering on the surface, but it was fatal.
It led him to completely ignore logistics. Operation Barbarossa, the invasion of Russia.
His generals said the supply lines won't hold. The winter is coming.
He ignored them because he believed his destiny trumped logistical reality.
That is the mind completely blinding you to facts.
It's the ultimate user error. Believing the script in your head is more real than the ground under your feet.
The second distortion is enemy inferiority.
Racism as a strategic liability.
He underestimated the USSR and the USA because his bias told him they were weak or decadent.
He couldn't see their actual industrial capacity because his prejudice acted as a blindfold.
He was fighting a fantasy, not the real enemy.
And the third distortion, unilateral control.
Micromanagement.
The belief that one will can force a complex system to bend.
He refused to let his generals retreat, even when it was tactically necessary.
And the lesson here, according to the source,
Supremacy is a strategic liability.
it blinds you. True strength is adaptation.
It's seeing the world as it actually is not as you want it to be.
If you are trapped in a distortion, you will eventually crash against reality.
And reality always wins.
Always. It's a massive, tragic example.
But the source makes a really uncomfortable pivot here.
It says, don't just look at history and judge. Look at your own Tuesday.
Right. It's easy to spot cognitive distortion in a dictator.
It's much harder to spot it when you are the one doing it.
The authors call this the alchemy of perception.
Because we do the same thing. We aren't invading countries, but we walk into a meeting with a script in our head that might be totally wrong.
Bias isn't just a moral failing, it's a perceptual error.
Imagine you're walking down the street at night. You see a group of teenagers.
Your heart races.
Is that fear based on an immediate actual threat?
Or is it an old script, an old movie trope playing in your head?
Or think about the manager who dismisses a young intern saying Gen Z is lazy.
Is she actually incompetent?
Or do you have an enemy inferiority distortion running?
If you don't question the script, you miss the talent. You are operating on bad data.
The source gives us a protocol for this. Feed the mind accurate data.
Retrain the body's response. Box breathing is mentioned here as a tool.
And then align with the unseen force. Look for shared humanity.
It's about manually overriding the glitch.
Which brings us to the entity that actually feels the fear or the bias or the excitement.
The body. Section 5, the body as vessel.
We have to completely reevaluate the body.
We tend to live entirely in our heads.
We treat the body like a donkey we ride around. Take me to the meeting, body. Feed me, body.
But the source reminds us the body is the only place you can actually live.
The mind is a time traveler. It's worrying about tomorrow or regretting yesterday.
The body is always here. It is the anchor.
And it has its own intelligence.
Massive intelligence. Think about healing a cut.
You cut your finger. Do you have to intellectually manage the clotting factor?
Do you have to send a memo to the white blood cells?
No. It just happens.
The body knows how to knit skin back together.
That is a level of intelligence your conscious mind can't even touch.
Or procedural memory, like riding a bike.
You can't explain the physics of balance to a 5-year-old.
But your body understands the physics perfectly.
Now here is the stat from the sources that actually stop me in my tracks.
Oh, the sensory processing data?
Yes. Specifically, how much raw data our nervous system handles versus what our conscious brain actually sees.
The bandwidth problem. Break this down for the listener because it's wild.
The estimate is that the human body, the eyes, skin, ears, proprioception.
It's taking in roughly 11 million bits of information per second.
It is a fire hose of data.
11 million.
But the conscious mind, the part of you that is thinking, I need to buy eggs or this deep dive is interesting.
That can only process about 40 to 50 bits per second.
Wait, hold on. 11 million versus 50.
It's a rounding error. You are consciously aware of 0.00005% of your reality.
So scientifically speaking, we are basically completely oblivious.
We have to be. If you felt your shirt touching every single square inch of your skin,
Heard the hum of the fridge, heard the traffic outside.
and tracked the pupil dilation of the person across from you, all at once you'd have a psychotic break.
The brain filters it out. It gives you the executive summary.
But, and here is where the source material gets super interesting. Just because the brain filters it out doesn't mean the system didn't record it.
Bingo. That's the gut feeling.
It's not magic, it's rapid data processing.
That bad vibe you get from a new business partner.
That is your 11 million bit processor noticing microexpressions, pheromones, and tone shifts.
Things that your 40-bit conscious mind completely missed.
So when the source talks about the body's yes and no, it's talking about reading that hidden report.
Exactly. Learning to read the body is like upgrading your internal internet connection from dial-up to fiber optic.
So what does a yes feel like physically?
It's subtle at first. An opening. A feeling of lightness.
A forward lean.
Expansion in the chest.
And a no?
Contraction. Tightness in the stomach. Withdrawal. A feeling of heaviness.
If you are making a decision and your logic says yes, but your stomach feels like a knot.
Trust the stomach. It has so much more data.
The body acts as an energetic bridge.
It bridges the gap between third-person science-like neurons firing and hormones releasing.
And first-person experience, the actual feeling of redness or love.
The body is where the biology meets the biography.
And that points us to the final, deepest section. Section 6, the force unwitnessed.
We are entering the mystery now.
The source starts this section with a paradox. That which enables perception cannot itself be perceived.
Think about your eye. Your eye sees the world.
It sees the tree, the car, the computer screen.
But the eye cannot turn around and see itself.
It is the instrument of seeing.
Or the screen analogy.
Right. You go to the movies, you see the actors, the drama, the explosions.
You don't see the white silver screen.
If the screen wasn't there, there would be no movie.
But the screen itself is invisible because you are looking at the movie.
So this force is the scream.
It is the condition that makes experience possible.
It's not a mystical peak experience you have on a mountaintop once a year.
It is the background hum beneath everything.
The source mentions it has been called the Tao Brahman God, or even the algorithm of reality.
But the source grounds this physiologically, too. It's not just distinct from the body.
No, it expresses through the body.
The nervous system transmitting signals, that's the force.
The heart beating 100,000 times a day without a conscious command, that's the force.
And cellular life, ATP production, DNA replication.
It's all happening in the dark completely without us managing it.
The analogy used here is the light bulb. We are the light bulb.
And the force is the electricity.
I really like that.
The electricity doesn't belong to the bulb. The bulb didn't create it.
But the bulb gives the electricity a shape, a localized form.
We are not separate entities observing the force. We are the force expressing itself through form.
So if we accept all of this, the metamind, the body's intelligence, the force.
How do we actually put it all together? How do we stop flickering?
Section 7 is integration.
The goal is to move from fragmentation, where your mind is fighting your body and you're disconnected from the force,
To a unified operating system.
the jazz club metaphor comes back here.
Yes. Beauty isn't perfect execution of a rigidly written score.
It's emergence. It's the collaboration between skilled players.
Mind, body, and force are the jazz trio.
The source outlines the 5 paths to embodiment. Let's run through them quickly.
First sensation. This is feeling the hardware.
Putting your hand in ice water, that is raw sensation.
Thinking that water is cold is mind. You have to get back to the raw data.
Second breath, the power source.
Using the diaphragm to signal safety to the vagus nerve.
Third movement, calibration. Move into flush energy.
Animals shake off trauma. We tend to store it. Movement releases it.
Fourth, stillness, diagnostic mode.
Turning down the noise so you can actually hear the signal.
And fifth expression, output, completing the circuit.
If you receive signals but don't express them, you create compression.
Compression sounds painful.
It is. It's stored tension. It eventually becomes illness.
And finally, the concept of the field.
This is about the space between people. It's not empty.
It's a conductive medium. We create microclimates.
Like how one person can walk into a room and the temperature just drops.
Exactly. Expansion versus contraction in the field.
Reading the room is actually reading your own nervous system's reaction to the field.
This brings us to the end of our journey today, the outro. We've covered a massive amount of ground.
We really have. And the core idea the source leaves us with is the update concept.
Transformation isn't a destination. You don't just arrive and stop.
It's an ongoing software update. You are not broken.
You are just running a current version of a self that was never meant to be finished.
And the final question to leave our listeners with, there's a scene in the source about a traveler at a cafe asking, what pattern am I running?
It connects the micro to the macro.
The patterns of the cosmos seasons, tides, orbits, are the exact same structural patterns running in your daily habits.
So the real challenge is to move from unconscious repetition, just looping the old script.
To conscious co-creation.
That's the big takeaway.
We leave you, listener, with the image of the blank canvas of the new day.
The brush is in your hand.
As the source says, you are not a closed system. You are a node in something vast and alive.
What you broadcast, the network receives.
Beautifully put.
Thanks for taking this deep dive with us. I wanna We'll see you start on the today next one. With a really specific feeling. I think everyone listening to this deep dive has had this at least once.
Oh, for sure.
It usually happens late at night. Maybe you're driving alone on a long stretch of highway, or maybe you're just staring at the ceiling at like 3 in the morning and you suddenly just detach.
Right, like a zoom out.
Yeah, exactly. You look at your hands on the steering wheel, or you look at the ceiling fan spinning and you think, wait, is this it? Am I just running a script?
It's that moment of glitching out of the matrix, basically.
Yeah, it's distinct from just being bored or tired. It's this sudden, slightly terrifying realization that your life is just a series of automated responses. Coffee, commute, work, email, Netflix, sleep, repeat.
The treadmill.
A treadmill. And in that moment, you feel like a passenger in your own body. You're just along for the ride. And the source material we're covering today calls this the user mode.
Which is such a great term for it.
It is. And the central thesis we are unpacking in this deep dive is honestly somewhat radical. It suggests that 90% of what you consider to be you, so your personality, your anxieties, your politics, even your taste in food, is just software running on a loop.
And often it's not even software you wrote. It's legacy code.
That's the kicker right there. It's software installed by your parents or your culture or a trauma from third grade. So today we are looking at a really comprehensive guide called Awakening the Metamind. We're going to break down the first 6 chapters today.
And the mission here for this deep dive is to explore this first phase of the journey, which the author calls awakening. We are moving from the surface of the mind down to the wisdom of the body and eventually to this invisible force that powers the whole thing.
But I think we need to clarify right out of the gate because meta is this huge buzzword that's been co-opted by tech giants and memes. What we actually mean by the meta mind in this context.
Yeah, we absolutely should, because we aren't talking about the metaverse. We aren't talking about VR goggles or crypto or anything like that.
And we aren't talking about just thinking about thinking right. Because I can sit here and overthink my anxiety all day long. I can completely spiral about why I'm spiraling. That doesn't make me meta.
No, it just makes you neurotic.
Exactly.
That is a very distinct difference that the source points out. Standard thinking is looking at the problem, like saying, I'm worried about money. You're swimming in the worry. You're drowning in the content of the thought.
You're in the river.
You're in the river. Meta-awareness is stepping out of the river and sitting on the bank. It's a positional shift. You move from the subject, I am worried, to the observer. So it becomes, I notice a thought pattern regarding financial scarcity.
It sounds subtle, but the source argues this shift is literally the only difference between a conscious life and a sleepwalking one. And they use this analogy of a multi-story building to explain this.
The building analogy.
Yeah, and I'll be honest, when I first saw the building analogy in the table of contents, I rolled my eyes a bit. I thought, okay, here we go, another generic self-help metaphor. But the way they break down the floors is actually kind of haunting.
It is, because it creates a vertical map of the self. Most people think their mind is just a studio apartment, everything in one room. The bed is next to the kitchen. But the text argues for distinct layers.
So walk us through the floor plan.
Okay, so the penthouse. Top floor. Floor-to-ceiling windows, lots of light. This is your conscious attention. It's where you are right now listening to us. It's the grocery list, the tactical decisions, the inner monologue that says, I need to buy milk, or, oh, that person is attractive.
It's the voice in your head.
Right. It feels like you because it's loud and it's visible. It's in the sunlight.
But the text says the penthouse is barely 5% of the building's operations.
If that. Because directly underneath in this dimly lit zone is the boiler room. No windows, humid, loud, filled with pipes. This is the subconscious.
Well, legacy code.
Exactly. This is where your habits, your automated emotional reactions, and your core beliefs live. So when you snap at your partner because the dishwasher wasn't loaded, right? You didn't decide that in the penthouse.
Right. I didn't sit in a leather chair in the sunlight and logically conclude that yelling about plates is the best strategy here.
No, you didn't. That instruction came straight from the boiler room. It bypassed the penthouse entirely. The steam just rose up and took over.
And then there's the foundation.
The meta mind, the bedrock. It doesn't move. It holds the whole structure up. It is the silent observer that watches the boiler room steam and watches the penthouse plan.
And the goal of this deep dive isn't to redecorate the penthouse, which is what most self-help essentially is.
Yes. Just think positive thoughts.
Right. Just hang in a new painting in the penthouse while the boiler room is literally on fire.
Exactly. We need to get a flashlight and go down to the basement. We need to check the foundation.
So let me get into the mechanics of this. This leads us to the first major section, the operating system and the interface, chapters 0 and 1. The source uses the metaphor of the mind as an OS. Now, I'm usually pretty wary of computer metaphors for the brain because they can get reductive. We aren't just zeros and ones.
Right, we're biological creatures.
But this one really landed for me because it distinguishes between the interface and the code.
It's the best way to understand why willpower usually fails. Think about your laptop. You have a user interface. You've got colorful icons, folders, the trash bin. It's designed to be easy. You click delete and the file vanishes.
Or so you think.
Right, because deep in the machine and the command lines of the kernel, that file isn't actually gone. The pointer to it was just removed. The actual data is still sitting on the hard drive.
And we interact with the UI because the code is terrifying. If I had to type raw code just to open my email, I would never send a message. I want the pretty button.
We all rely on the UI for speed. And in our lives, the UI is our emotional reaction. You feel angry, that's an icon. You click it and you yell. You didn't inspect the code that executed the anger. You just click the button.
Because it's fast.
Because it's fast. The source argues that most of us are power users at best. We can click fast, we can multitask, we can optimize our schedules, but we don't have admin access. We can't change the source code.
So how do we get the password? Because usually when I feel a negative emotion, let's say deep insecurity or sudden rage, my instinct isn't to inspect the code. My instinct is to close the app, force quit. I shouldn't feel this. I'm a professional adult. Stop it.
That's the default setting for the user.
Yeah.
Repression. But here is the reframe, and it's so critical for everything that follows. The source says emotions are not glitches. They are system alerts.
Like the check engine light on a dashboard?
Ideally, yes. But think about how people actually treat a check engine light. What do you do when it comes on?
I pray it goes away.
Right.
Or I put a piece of black tape over it. Or I just turn the radio up louder so I don't hear the engine struggling.
Exactly. You ignore it until the car is smoking on the side of the highway. And in the mind, we treat anger or fear as malware. We think something is wrong with me for feeling this. But the text argues that anger is actually a high-fidelity diagnostic tool. It's a proximity sensor.
Meaning what exactly?
Meaning, anger only triggers when a boundary has been crossed or a value has been violated. It's a red light flashing that says perimeter breach. If you suppress the anger, you are essentially disabling your own security system. You aren't fixing the problem, you're just blinding yourself to the intrusion.
Okay, but let me play devil's advocate here.
Yeah.
Because I know people who are always angry, their perimeter is massive. So if I treat every burst of rage as a sacred message about my boundaries, am I not just validating my own bad behavior? Like, oh, I yelled at the waiter because my system alert went off. That sounds like a really convenient excuse for just being a jerk.
That is a crucial distinction, and I'm really glad you brought it up. The alert is real. The interpretation might be wrong.
Yeah.
The sensor went off. That's a biological fact. You were feeling a physiological spike. That is data. But the metadata might be entirely corrupted.
So the sensor works perfectly, but the label is wrong.
Exactly. The sensor says threat detected. But your interpretive code, your boiler room script, might say the waiter is disrespecting me because I'm not important. That is the corruption. The admin doesn't just blindly believe the alert. The admin investigates it. Okay, the alarm is ringing. Is there actually a burglar? Or did a moth just fly into the motion sensor?
That makes a lot of sense. So this deep dive into the self is basically an IT audit.
In a way, yes. Take fear, for example. A source has this really beautiful line. Fear is the shadow cast by what you love.
Wow.
Right. You cannot fear losing something unless you value it. So instead of trying to be fearless, which the text basically calls a psychological lobotomy,
Yeah.
you use fear as a map. Oh, I'm terrified of this presentation. Why? Because I care about my professional reputation.
Yeah.
Okay, now we have actual beta. Now we can work with that instead of just fighting the fear.
That brings us to what I found to be the most challenging part of this first section, the alchemy of perception. The text makes a really bold claim here. It says we don't actually see reality. We see a simulation of reality that is constructed by our past.
And this aligns perfectly with modern neuroscience, specifically a concept called predictive processing. Your brain is locked in a dark skull. It has absolutely no direct access to the outside world. It just gets these electrical signals from the eyes and ears, just raw noise, and it has to guess what caused them. It is quite literally a prediction machine.
And the source applies this to something very heavy in Chapter 1, bias, racism, prejudice. It reframes these not just as moral failings, though they definitely are moral issues, but as cognitive errors. It calls them fight or flight responses to illusions.
It uses the late night walk scenario to illustrate this. Let's say you're walking alone at night. You see a group of strangers. They look different from you, maybe a different race, maybe a different style of dress. Your heart rate immediately spikes. Your palms sweat. You cross the street. Now you have to ask yourself, did you react to the actual people?
No, I reacted to a story my brain told me about the people.
Exactly. You reacted to a threat simulation running in your internal theater. Your brain said, unfamiliar equals danger. It pulled a file from the boiler room. Maybe it was a sensationalized news report you saw 10 years ago. Maybe it was a stereotype your grandfather casually mentioned when you were a kid. And it overlaid that file onto reality.
It's like augmented reality. I'm seeing the physical world, but through this intense filter of fear.
And the tragedy, as the source points out, is that the body doesn't know the difference. Your cortisol spikes as if the threat were absolutely real. You enter a combat state against a phantom. And when you are in a combat state, your empathy center, your prefrontal cortex goes completely offline.
It shuts down.
Completely. You cannot connect. You physically cannot see their humanity because all your biological resources are diverted to either run or fight.
So the admin move here isn't to shame yourself for having the initial biological reaction. It's to catch the prediction in real time.
Right. It's to be able to say, I am noticing a physiological threat response. Is there a saber-toothed tiger here? No. They're just teenagers waiting for a bus. You have to manually update the software.
And the source gives a 3-step process for this architecture, rebuilding reality, basically. And honestly, step 2 is the one I struggle with. Step 1 is gather data, be curious, replace your assumptions with questions. That makes sense to me intellectually. But step 2 is retrain the body.
Because the bias isn't just a cognitive thought, is it? It's a physical contraction in the tissues. You can't just think your way out of a panic response. You have to signal safety to the hardware.
They mention box breathing. 4 seconds, if 4 seconds hold, 4 seconds out, 4-second hold. It feels almost too simple to work against something as deep-seated and complex as prejudice. Like, I'm going to breathe my way out of systemic bias. It sounds a little bit like a bumper sticker.
I completely get the skepticism. But you have to look at the biology of what's happening. You aren't fixing systemic bias in society with a single breath. You are bringing your own prefrontal cortex back online so you can choose your action rather than reacting like a cornered animal.
Okay, that frames it differently.
You are reclaiming your agency. If you don't calm the body, the mind physically cannot change its mind. It is impossible to learn or reassess when you're locked in survival mode.
And then step 3 is align with the unseen force, which sounds incredibly mystical at first. But the practical example they give is about finding a shared connection point. Shared laughter, shared goals.
It's about intentionally replacing defensiveness with warmth. It is active architecture. You are building a bridge in the exact moment where your ancient brain wanted to build a wall.
Now, hearing all this, part of me thinks, sign me up. I want admin access. I want to be in control of my reactions. But another part of me is honestly exhausted just listening to it. It sounds like so much constant work.
It is work.
And that's what Section 2 is all about, the obstacles to awakening, Chapter 2.
The resistance is completely inevitable. Chapter 2 is essentially a field manual on human self-sabotage. The source asks a really profound question. If admin access is so great, why doesn't everyone have it? Why do we voluntarily stay in user mode?
Because the user part of us, the surface self, doesn't want to give up control. The text lists these skepticism loops that I definitely recognized in myself when I was reading it. Things like, who does this author think they are? Or just screw this, I don't need it. I'm fine just the way I am.
Those aren't actual intellectual critiques, though. They are defense mechanisms disguised as intellect. We deceive ourselves because honesty feels incredibly dangerous. The surface self is terrified of judgment. And even more, it's terrified of discovering that who we thought we were isn't actually real.
The book calls self-deception a coping mechanism that really hit home for me. We lie to ourselves to avoid the pain of change.
Yes. And to counter that instinct, the source introduces the 4 foundational pillars. These are essentially the ground rules for the transformation. We won't go into super deep detail on all 4 today, but we really need to touch on nounships because that concept is fascinating.
Nounships. It sounds like an elementary school grammar lesson.
It really does. But it's about how we fundamentally trap ourselves with language. We use nouns to describe temporary states. For example, you say, I am an anxious person. That's a noun. It implies a fixed permanent state, like saying, I am a human or I am tall.
Instead of saying, I am feeling anxiety.
Right. I am feeling anxiety is a verb. It's an event. It's weather passing through you. I am an anxious person is an identity cage. If you define yourself by the noun, your brain will literally fight to defend that identity, even if that identity makes you miserable.
Wait, why would it do that?
Because the brain loves consistency more than it loves happiness.
That is a terrifying thought. The brain loves consistency more than happiness, so we will stay miserable just because it's familiar.
Exactly. Familiarity equals predictability. And to a biological organism, predictability feels safe. The unknown, even if the unknown is objectively better and happier, feels dangerous because it hasn't been mapped yet. That's why radical honesty, which is another pillar, is so agonizingly hard.
Because you have to admit you're choosing the misery.
Yes, you have to look in the mirror and say, I am choosing to stay in this job I hate because I'm afraid of the unknown. Rather than the story you usually tell, which is, I'm staying because I'm loyal, that level of honesty burns away the illusion.
Okay, so we've got the OS metaphor, we've faced the obstacles. Now the deep dive takes a real turn. We are entering the labyrinth of thought, chapters 3 and 4. Reading this felt like crossing a threshold into a completely different world.
It is a crossing. We are leaving the known world of clear-cut definitions and self-help slogans, and we're entering the messy reality of how the mind actually operates. And the first major revelation here is a big one. The mind is a processor, not the originator.
Unpack that for us. Processor, not originator.
We tend to trust our minds implicitly. We think our thoughts are the ultimate truth, the absolute bedrock of reality. But the source argues that the mind merely organizes data. It does not create the raw data. It takes sensations, impulses, chemical signals from the body, and it spins them into a coherent story. But the story isn't the raw data.
So the mind is kind of like a news anchor reading a script off a teleprompter. The actual script comes from somewhere else.
That is a perfect analogy. And recognizing that creates distance. You realize, oh, my mind is currently telling me a story about why I'm upset. But the upset itself, the raw physical sensation of distress, came from the body, or from the unseen force, which we'll get to.
Which brings us to the second revelation in the labyrinth. The body is sacred, not subordinate.
This directly challenges a massive cultural narrative. Especially in Western society, we are taught to view the body as just a container, a vehicle for the brain, a servant that we just drag around to meetings. We treat it like a rental car, put fuel in it, hope it doesn't break down, and ignored it otherwise.
We totally do.
But here the body's presented as the primary source of wisdom. It's not just carrying the head around, it is constantly feeding the head the exact information it needs to understand reality.
The imagery the author uses in Chapter 4 is just beautiful. It describes the mind as a silent, shimmering theater. And inside this theater, there is a feedback loop running constantly.
This loop is the mechanism of our reality. It goes like this. Thoughts shape actions. Actions birth experiences. Experiences reshape thoughts. It's perfectly circular.
Can we make that concrete for the listener? Because loops are really easy to talk about in the abstract, but they're incredibly hard to spot when you're actually caught inside one.
Sure. Let's trace one. Let's say you have a thought. The thought is, I am socially awkward. That thought shapes your action. You go to a party, and because of that thought, you stand in the corner, you look at your phone, and you actively avoid eye contact. That action births an experience. The experience is that no one talks to you because your body language is completely closed off. That experience then reshapes and hardens the original thought. See, I knew it was awkward, no one likes me, and the loop reinforces itself.
Oof. Yeah, I think I've lived that exact loop. And the tricky part is the evidence feels so undeniably real. You say to yourself, no one talked to me. Well, yeah, but you created the exact conditions for that evidence to exist. So how do we actually break it? Because once that wheel starts spinning, it has serious momentum.
You have to insert awareness into the gap. You have to notice the thought, I am socially awkward, and pause. You catch the actor on the stage of that shimmering theater and you say, wait, is that true? Or is that just a script from the boiler room? When you interrupt the thought, you have a window to change the action.
Well, you put the phone away.
You put the phone away, you force a smile, you stand near the food table, and suddenly the experience changes. Maybe someone approaches you and asks about the dip. Now you have brand new evidence. The loop is broken.
The source also talks a lot about tracing the river upstream. This is what it calls the essential inquiry.
Yes. If thoughts come from feelings, and feelings come from physical sensations, then where do sensations come from? We are basically walking backward deeper and deeper into the cave. We are teasing the existence of something underneath the biology entirely.
Which is a perfect transition to Section 4, the body as bridge. This is Chapter 5, and this is where we get into the time travel trap.
This is a distinction that seems so obvious once you hear it, but it changes absolutely everything when you really internalize it. The mind is a time machine. It is almost always in the past, regretting something or replaying a conversation. Or it's in the future planning, worrying, anticipating. It rarely ever lives in the present.
But the body, on the other hand,
The body only lives in the present. Your lungs are breathing this exact air right now. Your heart is beating right now. You can sit in your chair and vividly imagine being in Paris next year, but your feet are on the floor in this room. The body literally cannot go to the future.
so the body is the anchor. If you want to stop time traveling and getting anxious about a future that hasn't even happened yet, you have to get into your body.
Precisely. This is why grounding exercises work.
Mm.
It's not magic, it's physics. You are pulling your awareness out of the imaginary time machine and bringing it back to the only physical point in time that actually exists.
But the body isn't just a passive anchor, right? It's also a storage unit. The text brings up somatic memory. It talks about how the body remembers things that the conscious mind might have completely forgotten.
The body keeps the score. Trauma joy, deeply ingrained habits. They are stored in muscle tension, in your posture and in your nervous system. You might mentally think you are completely over a past event. You say, oh, I've forgiven my ex. We're good. But if your shoulders tighten up to your ears every time you hear a certain ringtone or your gut clenches when you smell a certain perfume, your body is telling you that the memory is still alive.
The file hasn't been deleted in the kernel.
Exactly. The UI says deleted, but the source code is still running the threat response.
This connects deeply to the hard problem of consciousness that's mentioned in the text.
This is the great scientific mystery of our age. We know all about neurons and chemicals and synapses. We can map the physical brain with incredible precision. But how does a physical chemical reaction actually become the subjective feeling of a Tuesday afternoon in autumn? How does raw matter become feeling?
And the practical takeaway from the book here is that we can't just think our way to change.
Right. You can't just rewrite the code while sitting up in the penthouse. You have to go down to the physical foundation. You have to feel your way there. You have to change the posture, breathe the breath, actively release the tension in the fascia. If you want to change your mind, you literally have to move your body.
Okay, we are going really deep now. We've done the mind, we've done the body, now we arrive at the absolute climax of this arc, chapter 6, the deepest mystery, the unseen force.
This is where we answer the ultimate question. What powers the entire system? If the mind is the software and the body is the hardware, what is the electricity?
The source uses a phrase here that I have honestly been chewing on for days. The eye cannot see its own seeing.
It is the great paradox of human existence. Think about it practically. You use your eyes to see everything in the physical world. You see the table, you see the sky, you see your own hands. But you cannot look at your own eyes directly.
I mean, you can see a reflection in a mirror.
Sure, you can see a reflection, but you cannot look directly at the actual lens you are looking through. The seeing cannot see itself.
So the unseen force is the thing doing the seeing.
Exactly. It is the instrument of knowing. It is invisible to itself precisely because it is the self. The source argues that this force isn't some mystical object you're supposed to find out there on a mountaintop or in a temple. It's the ground of your experience right in here. It is the pure awareness that is hearing these exact words right now.
Now, I have to ask this because I know listeners are thinking it. Is this getting religious? Are we talking about a soul here? Because for some listeners, that's the exact moment they might just tune out.
It's a completely valid question. But the source is very careful here. It is not pushing a theology. It is pushing phenomenology, which is just a fancy academic word for the study of direct experience. You do not have to believe in a soul to admit that something is aware of your thoughts.
Right. Something is listening.
Yes. You don't have to be religious to notice that you exist. This force is simply a label for that pure, empty awareness that sits quietly behind your loud personality.
Then this force isn't completely separate from the body. It's not like a ghost trapped inside a meat machine.
No, that's dualism. That's the old mind versus body split that Descartes pushed. This source strongly argues for an integrated expression. The invisible force becomes visible through the body. The body is the sophisticated technology the force uses to actually engage with the physical world.
The text outlines this process in what it calls the sequence of creation. It goes like this. The force activates physiological patterns, which then becomes sensation, which then becomes emotion, which then becomes thought, which finally becomes action.
And usually as users, we only notice the very end of that long chain. We only notice the thought or the action. We say, why did I yell? Or why am I thinking this terrible thought? Awakening the metamind is about meticulously tracing that chain all the way back.
Right.
Before the yell, there was a conscious thought. Before the thought, there was a wave of emotion. Before the emotion, there was a raw physical sensation in the chest. And before the sensation, there was the initial impulse of the force itself.
It's like being a forensic detective of your own existence.
It really is. And when you trace it back, you realize that you are not just the angry reaction at the end of the chain, you are the force at the very beginning of it. And that realization brings immense freedom. It means you aren't your anger. You are the spaciousness in which the anger is temporarily happening.
So let's bring this home for the listener. We have covered 6 incredibly dense chapters today. We've unpacked the operating system, the obstacles, the labyrinth, the body, and the force. Let's synthesize all of this. What are the big takeaways?
We've essentially explored 3 main territories. First, the labyrinth of thought. This means seeing the mind not as the absolute master, but as a tool, a theater where we can step back and direct the play rather than just acting in it. Second, the sacred vessel, recognizing the body not as a dumb servant, but as the anchor of our presence and the storage drive of our history. And third, the unwitnessed force, the battery powering the entire system, the pure awareness that is looking out through your eyes.
And crucially, these aren't three separate sequential steps. You don't do the mind for a month and then move on to do the body.
Right. They are inseparable dimensions of a single reality. You are always all three at once.
So for the listener who has been with us on this pretty intense journey, what do we actually do tomorrow morning? How do we apply this in real life? Because we can't just walk around contemplating our own existence all day. We have jobs, we have kids.
True. Let's go all the way back to the blank canvas concept from Chapter 1 and radical honesty from Chapter 0. The challenge for tomorrow is actually very simple. Pause. Pick a completely mundane moment. Brushing your teeth, sitting stuck in traffic, waiting for the coffee machine to brew.
And in that mundane moment, what do we do?
Ask yourself this one question. Who is noticing this? Stop thinking about the coffee for a second. Notice the noticing of the coffee. Drop your attention down into the body. Feel your feet on the floor. And just realize that there's a silent, observant presence behind the constant noise of your thoughts. That presence is the admin. That is the architect.
I love that. It's such a tiny, subtle shift, but it changes absolutely everything. It turns a boring, frustrating wait for coffee into an actual moment of awakening.
It does. It breaks the autopilot. It snaps you right out of the matrix.
Before we sign off today, I want to leave the listener with one final provocative thought, something to just chew on after this is over.
If the mind creates the story of who you are, and the body holds the history of where you've been, then who is the one listening to this deep dive right now? The answer isn't your name. The answer isn't your job title. The answer is the force itself, looking out through your eyes, listening through your ears. You are the mystery you've been trying to solve.
That gives me chills. Thanks for taking the plunge with us
Feeling
today.
when you get a new phone or like a really complex piece of software,
Oh, yeah.
and you just know you're using maybe 10% of what it's actually capable of.
All right, the default mode trap.
Yeah, exactly. You're just clicking the default buttons, reacting to the notifications, and basically letting the factory settings run your life.
It's the path of least resistance. I mean, you use the tool, but you don't really understand the operating system at all.
Right. Well, the manuscript we're deep diving into today, it's titled Current Revised.pdf-catchy. Catchy.
Very catchy.
But it argues that this is exactly how most of us treat our own consciousness. We are walking around with user permissions, restricted access, when we really should be logging in as the admin.
It's a highly provocative premise. The text is essentially a technical manual for upgrading your cognitive permissions. It argues that meaning isn't something you just stumble upon like a lost coin.
Right.
It's an architectural structure you have to actually build, but you can't build it if you don't understand the software you're running.
So to get us out of this user mode, the source material starts with a visualization. It asks you, the listener, to imagine standing on a high sunlit plateau.
Picture this. You're up high, the air is thin and clear, and if you turn around and look behind you, you see the winding path you just climbed. That is your pass.
All the wins, the embarrassments, the times you got totally lost.
Exactly. It's fixed. It's done. You can't change the terrain behind you.
But then you turn around and face forward.
And that right there is the meta-mind. Looking forward, there is no path yet, just open sky.
Just open sky.
The core insight here is that the future isn't a script handed to you by your parents or your boss or society. It's a blank canvas. But, and here's the catch, most people stare at that open sky and feel panic, not freedom.
Because a script is safe. If you have a script, you don't have to think. You just read your lines.
Exactly. To handle that open sky without freezing up, you need meta-awareness. The text uses a really useful analogy here, the theater.
I really like this one. It says most of us live our lives on the stage.
Right. Think of your thoughts as actors. You have the anxiety actor, the hunger actor, the angry about that email actor.
They're loud and dramatic.
Very loud, and they demand your attention. Most people identify completely with the actors. They think, I am this anger. They get completely swept up in the scene.
But the meta-mind isn't on stage.
No, the meta-mind is the director sitting in the back row of the dark theater. The director sees the anger, acknowledges the performance, but doesn't get swept up in the drama. The director decides if that scene needs to run or if it's time to cut to something else.
And the source also mentions the building analogy, right?
Yes. It describes the mind as a multi-story building. The top floor is your conscious thoughts where the sunlight hits. The middle floor is your habits and beliefs in dim light. But the foundation, the basement level holding it all up, is that meta-mind, the observer.
That separation is the key. You aren't the thought. You are the space in which the thought is happening.
Yeah.
How do you actually do that? Because it sounds nice, But when I'm angry, I'm usually not sitting in the back row. I'm right there screaming on stage.
That is where the structure comes in. Our mission today is to unpack this. The text lays out 4 pillars of meta-awareness. If you want to be the director and not just a frantic actor, you need 4 specific structural supports.
Okay, let's get into it.
And the first one is the hardest: radical self-honesty.
The target here is truth. And we aren't talking about not lying to your spouse or not cheating on your taxes. We're talking about the lies we tell ourselves.
The text calls out our defense mechanisms like rationalization and projection. These are the tools the user employs to avoid discomfort. The surface self is the narrator and defender, but we need to access the core witness, the observer.
My personal favorite is rationalization. I'll say I'm not procrastinating on this project. I'm letting the ideas marinate.
That's a classic one. You're reframing reality to protect your ego from the truth that you're just afraid to start. To combat this, the source suggests the wise parent test.
This is a cool mental toggle. You imagine a wise, compassionate parent talking to a child?
If a child says, "My stomach hurts, I can't go to school," a naive parent might just say, "Okay, stay home." A critical parent might yell and call them lazy.
Right.
But a wise parent checks the temperature. They ask, "Are you actually sick, or are you scared of the math test today?" They don't shame the fear, but they also don't accept the lie.
So you have to parent yourself. You have to look in the mirror and say, "I love you," but you're not marinating ideas. You're just terrified of failing.
Precisely. It's about compassionate firmness. Which brings us to pillar 2, flexible goals. The target here is flexibility. The source uses a comparison here that I think everyone has lived through: the printed map versus the GPS.
This is all about how your brain handles failure. A printed map is a rigid plan. If you miss a turn on a paper map, the plan is completely broken. You are effectively lost.
And that's when the panic sets in. The brain actually perceives a broken plan as a threat.
Like, I ate a donut, my diet is ruined, I failed, might as well eat the whole box.
That is exactly the printed map response. But a GPS, if you miss a turn, what does it say?
Recalculating.
Recalculating. The destination hasn't changed, only the route has. The neuroscience here is really important. When you have flexible goals, you keep the brain's reward system active. You stay in seeking mode, which is dopamine-driven and motivated.
But when a rigid plan breaks,
When you have rigid goals that break, you shift into threat mode. That shuts down complex thinking, and your brain just wants safety.
so we want to train our brains to be Waze, not a Rand McNally atlas. Okay, pillar 3, dimensional awareness. The target here is totality. This is about breaking down the stack of our experience so we don't get overwhelmed.
We tend to lump everything into one big blob called my feelings, but the text argues for a strict hierarchy. At the bottom, you have sensation, raw data, heart rate up, palms, sweating, stomach churning.
And then comes feeling, which is the body's response.
Right. Followed by thought, which is the story we tell ourselves. And finally, emotion, which is the interpreted state. The source calls this concept homonymy.
Like how one word can have 2 meanings.
Exactly. The sensation of a racing heart is just biological data, but your mind has to label it. If you label it fear, you release cortisol. If you label it excitement, you might release adrenaline and dopamine.
The physical data is the exact same, but the label changes the chemical outcome.
And the metamind, the director, gets to catch that data and choose the label before the story starts. You can say, "My body is preparing for action," rather than "I'm having a panic attack."
Which leads to the final pillar, and honestly the weirdest term in the document, nounships.
It is a bit of a linguistic heavy lifter. The target here is fluid identity. We are obsessed with nouns. I am an anxious person. I am a failure. Nouns are static. They are concrete.
It's like wearing a permanent name tag.
The text suggests shifting to modes or weather patterns. You wouldn't say "I am rain." You say "it is raining." So instead of "I am anxious," I am currently in anxiety mode.
I am occupying the state of frustration. It implies it's temporary, it's going to pass.
It liberates you from fixed definitions. You become a fluid process. If you are a fluid process, you can change. If you are a concrete noun, you're stuck.
So those are the 4 pillars: radical self-honesty, flexible goals, dimensional awareness, and fluid identity. Now, the manuscript takes a very sharp turn here. We go from inner peace and linguistics to World War II.
It is jarring, but it's highly effective. The source introduces a heavy but necessary historical case study of Adolf Hitler's military strategy to illustrate what happens when these pillars are completely ignored.
Specifically, the lack of truth and flexibility.
Yes. It frames supremacy not just as evil, but as a massive strategic cognitive liability. It identifies 3 specific distortions that led to collapse. These are basically the anti-pillars.
And just to be crystal clear for you listening, we are impartially reporting on the content provided in this deep dive. We're looking at the psychological framework the author is presenting.
Absolutely. We are just looking at the source's analysis of cognitive failure. So the first distortion is the myth of divine infallibility. This is a total violation of truth. The source argues Hitler believed his will could override logistics. He ignored supply lines and weather reports at the disaster at Stalingrad because they simply didn't fit his grand narrative.
If you can't be honest about the winter weather, you lose the army. You can't just will the snow to stop.
Right. Grandiosity leads to disaster. The second was the fiction of enemy inferiority. He believed the USSR was a colossus of clay and the US was decadent.
Which blinded him to their actual industrial output and manpower.
Exactly. He refused to look at the real numbers because he was blinded by his own story. He was looking at a map in his head, not the actual territory on the ground.
And the third distortion.
The illusion of unilateral control. This is the refusal to recalculate, the printed map mindset on a global scale. At the Kursk offensive, he engaged in heavy micromanagement and refused to allow tactical retreats. He thought he could force the outcome by sheer rigidity.
So the takeaway here isn't really about military history. It's a warning about supremacy as a strategic liability in our own minds. If you deny reality and ignore feedback, it leads to collapse.
Reality always wins against delusion. The admin respects reality, the dictator tries to fight it. And in our own lives, that dictator is usually our ego, refusing to admit we were wrong or that we need to change course.
Okay, let's leave the history books and look at the architecture of the self. To become the architect of meaning, the source divides us into 3 territories: the mind, the body, and the force.
This is the system architecture. Territory 1 is the mind described as the labyrinth of thought.
And the big takeaway here is that the mind is an interpreter, not the source of reality.
Correct. It organizes chaos but doesn't originate it. We often think our thoughts are reality, but the source uses the garden analogy. You cannot stop seeds from blowing into your garden. Those are random thoughts. They just appear. But you can decide which ones to water with your attention.
And if you water the wrong ones, you get what they call a trap loop.
A trap loop is self-reinforcing. It goes like this. Thought, I can't speak in public. Action, you avoid speaking. Result, you get no practice. Belief, see, I'm terrible at this. The belief calcifies because you never challenged it. You watered the weed.
The alternative is the liberation loop, where you examine the thought, interrupt the cycle, and water a different seed. Moving to territory 2, the body, or the sacred vessel. And this isn't just about going to the gym, it's about the hardware.
Specifically the second brain. We're talking about the enteric nervous system in your gut. It has 500 million neurons.
That's more than a cat's brain right there in your stomach.
And here's the killer stat. 90% of the signals travel up from the gut to the brain, not down.
So when people say trust your gut, that's actual biological data transfer.
It's somatic intelligence.
Yeah.
Your body processes reality and reacts before your mind can even name it. If you hear a loud bang, you flinch before you think firework. Your body is way faster than your intellect.
The source gives a specific practical tool for hacking this system, the physiological psi.
Validated by neurobiology labs at Stanford, it's the fastest way to manually reset your nervous system.
Walk us through the mechanic, because people always say just breathe, but they never say how.
It's very precise. You take 2 inhales through the nose, a long one, then a sharp little one to top it off. Then 1 long extended exhale through the mouth.
What exactly is the double inhale doing?
It pops open the alveoli, the little air sacs in your lungs, which tend to collapse when we're stressed. Reinflating them increases the surface area for offloading carbon dioxide. When you dump that CO2 through the long exhale, it signals the heart to slow down immediately. It's a hardware reset button.
I love that. It's not calm down, just dump the carbon dioxide.
Yeah.
It feels very engineering-based. Okay, territory 3. The force unwitnessed. This is where things get a little metaphysical.
It walks the line, for sure. The source links this universal concept to prana-chi ruach, or simply bioelectricity. The paradox is that which enables perception cannot itself be perceived.
Like an eye trying to look at itself. Or a screen showing a movie, but you don't see the screen.
Exactly. Or a light bulb trying to see the electricity. You are the bulb. The force is the current. The bulb is just a temporary shape the energy takes for a while. You can burn out, break, or change shape, but the electricity itself is constant.
So we have the mind, which is the interpreter of the body, which is the hardware, and the force, which is the power. How do we integrate them? Because mine are usually fighting each other.
The text calls this integration. And it uses a modern streaming ecosystem metaphor that I think is absolutely brilliant.
I loved this part. So imagine your life as a live stream. The mind is the user interface, the dashboard or moderator where you manage the show. The body is the production studio, the cameras, the mics where the action physically happens. And the force is the network bandwidth.
Perfect. Now, what is fragmentation? That's what happens when these are out of sync. It's when the mind wants to stream a 4K movie, you want to work late, be productive, crush your goals, but the studio your body has dead batteries and the bandwidth your energy is throttling.
And usually the mind just screams at the studio, "Work harder, why are you buffering? You're so lazy."
Exactly. And the stream crashes. Integration is getting the dashboard, the studio, and the network to agree on the schedule. You can't stream 4K on dial-up, and you can't run a marathon with the flu.
So if we are buffering, if we're fragmented, what is the fix? The source gives a recovery protocol.
4 steps,
Yeah.
and please note, none of them involve trying harder. Step 1, notice without judgment. Just admit, I'm fragmented right now. Stop the whipping.
Step 2.
Ground in the body. Get out of the abstract dashboard and into the studio. Feel your feet on the floor. Check your posture.
Do the physiological sigh.
Exactly. You have to physically check in. Step 3 is name the trigger. What knocked you offline? Was it a weird email, a lack of sleep?
Just identify it. And step 4.
Micro adjustment. Make one small shift. Don't try to overhaul your whole life. Just drink a glass of water. Stretch. Write down your thoughts. Reset the rider, basically. Do one small thing that signals safety to the system.
It's surprisingly practical. We often try to think our way out of stress, but this argues you have to body your way out of it. To wrap this up, the manuscript offers a daily routine to keep this architecture standing. The morning triad.
The Traveler's Morning Ritual. It's designed as a practical takeaway to bring the 3 territories online in proper sequence.
It takes a few minutes, right?
Very quick. First body, wake up and move. Shake, stretch, dance for just 3 minutes. You have to turn the studio lights on before you start broadcasting.
Second mind. Check your mental state and set one intention. Not a massive to-do list, not a panic list. Just an intention like today I choose patience.
And finally, force. Hand on heart. Just acknowledge that you are alive. Acknowledge the aliveness flowing through you. It sounds small, but it connects you directly to the power source.
It sounds simple, almost too simple. But the text reminds us about neuroplasticity.
Building new habits is like walking through a forest. At first, it's hacking through vines. It's hard work. But through repetition, if you walk it every day, it becomes a dirt path. Eventually, it becomes a highway. The source notes it takes anywhere from 66 to 254 days to pave that highway.
So don't quit after week 1 when the vines grow back.
Right, because integration isn't a destination you arrive at and just retire. It is the active skill of recovering gracefully when you fall off balance. And you will fall off. The skill is just how fast you get back on.
That's the admin mindset. You don't control the weather, but you build the house to withstand it.
And you know exactly how to fix the roof when it leaks.
So that is our deep dive on currentrevised.pdf, a guide to moving from a passive user to an active architect of meaning.
It's a blueprint really worth keeping on your desk.
Here is a final thought to chew on as you unplug today. We talked about the light bulb analogy earlier. You are the bulb. The life force is the electricity. If that's true, if the power isn't yours, but just flowing through you, consider what that does to your need for validation. If you don't generate the electricity, maybe you don't need to constantly prove you're worthy of it. Maybe your only job is just to keep the glass clean so the light can shine through. Something to explore on your own. Thanks for listening.